Alright y'all, welcome back to an Abundant Harvest Homestead. I'm Papa Pepper. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about embracing your identity. For me, I've said before, you know, who I am to God, who I am to my family, as far as my wife, and then who I am to my children. That's my top three identities. But part of me being who I am is going to be a provider. So I'm talking about embracing my identity as a provider for this family. I say because all sorts of people can provide for my family. If somebody blesses us with something, they've just provided for our family. If God orchestrates something, He provided for my family. If I take some of my time and do something that turns into provisions, I've provided for my family. My children provide for their family. If they do the dishes, they provide clean dishes. If they clean up the house, they provide a clean house. If they go fishing and bring home some, fish, they provide food. If they come out here in the garden and accomplish some things, they provide food for the family. So provision comes in many different ways. I am one of the main earthly provider for my family. A lot of times I find that what people do in the modern world, the modern system, is that they believe that providing for your family is financial. That's where they focus. They gladly, unfortunately, exchange 40, 60, 80 hours a week, for the job to provide for the financial needs of the family. There is so much more besides financial needs that people should be providing for, and that's one reason why every day when I wake up, we have or try to have family devotions. Every evening when we lay down, we try to have family devotions. I'm also a spiritual provider for my family. I provide other things as well, but that's just another facet of it. And even a lot of my life is spent trying to be creative in providing for my family in a way that I don't need to provide as much financially. Okay? We own all of our property outright. We kind of rent it from the government every year in property tax, but we own it. We own the home we live in, okay? By doing those things, I cut debt, which brings interest, usury, into the picture. I don't have to pay interest. That's incredible because then I have less finances that I need to exchange my time and effort to get those finances to pay to somebody else, I didn't want that in my picture. So a lot of what I do is try to get creative to need less money so I can be the direct provider. If I exchange my time for money at a job and then exchange that money, at a grocery store or something like that to provide food, I'm an indirect provider. Somebody else provided that food. A lot of times if you read the ingredients, I would never put that stuff in my food. Do you know how much is put into food just simply to change the color to make people want to eat it? There is so much dye, so much food coloration, so much different weird stuff. I don't even know where it comes from, but I'd rather not have it in my body because I don't care what color my food is. I'm just as likely to eat a red tomato as I am to eat a yellow tomato. I don't care. It's a tomato. I'll eat it. Do some of them look neat because they're a different color? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But part of what I realized a bit ago, because we were talking about friends, and we were talking about specific close friends. Now, as a family, we're not entirely big on peer dependence. We're a family unit. A lot of times people have very strong bonds with people outside their family. I'm not saying that's wrong, but what I'm saying is if you have children building very strong bonds with other children, then they learn to be like other children. Depending on who else those children are exposed to, it doesn't always lead down a good path. So a lot of times, being a homeschooling family, if we interact with others, we interact on a family level. Our family meets with their family. Our girls don't run away to go have sleepovers with some other girls and leave them by and large unsupervised all night knowing who knows what's going on. We don't do that. That's our choice. That's our decision. I stand by it. I find wisdom in it. Not saying everyone has to do it, but I'm just saying sometimes I think certain things can be avoided that don't wind up being as beneficial. So as we were just kind of talking about how we mostly interact as family units, that means Mama Pepper doesn't exactly have a lot of girl time with any girls, running around with just her friends. I don't have a lot of time just running around with my friends. If I go somewhere to help someone, at least one of my kids is coming with me. And if I'm going somewhere with somebody else, I think part of trying to be wise and avoid accusation or temptation or other things, is just, if there's a multitude of witnesses, that stories aren't true because they'd all have to have the same story. So, just for instance, if I'm heading somewhere with somebody and they may, for whatever reason, decide to raise a false accusation about what happened on our trip, well, if I've got one of my children there with me, now we know that that's not true because we have a witness, just stuff like that. But the point is that a lot of our life is not spent running around fulfilling our own desires. It's just not. I don't spend any time, just hanging out with my guys at the bar or hanging out with my guys on the golf course. Or I was once invited to a fishing trip, and it was a week-long fishing trip up by the border of Canada. Would have been a lot of fun, I guarantee it. The people there, some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know, some of them were relatives. I would have really enjoyed it, but I didn't want to take a week off of my life with my family doing the things that we do. I couldn't justify that. I said, no, I like my life. I'd rather be here for that week than running around doing that. I just would. Not saying that wouldn't be fun, but my focus is more on what we've got going on. So that said, I realized that then a lot of my hobbies actually testify to who I am. And who I am as far as embracing my identity as a provider. One of my hobbies is gardening. Okay? When I garden, I provide food for my family. Again, I am a direct provider. I don't have to leave my family to get this food. I can do this with my family. I can harvest the garden with a 2-year-old if I want. I like that. That's a lot of fun for me. Because I get to invest in the relationship that I have, with one of my children doing it, or multiple of my children doing it. Years ago, when we started gardening in Wisconsin, most of my garden was just hot peppers. About 75% of it, at least over 50% of it, was just hot peppers from around the world. As we began to have more children and stuff, we started growing more of what people would generally consider to be food. A friend of mine said, wow, you must really like gardening. And I said, I eat. I eat. That's why I garden. Because I eat. So if a hobby of mine is going to be growing food, that's a direct way that I'm providing for my family, with my family, from our own property in our case. We don't go to a community garden or something. We do it on our own land. And I really like the hobby now because I see the purpose of it. Okay? It's not without purpose. There is an end result to my effort. And that's what I appreciate. And part of it too is taking stewardship over a portion of this world, finding out what works best in this growing zone, testing, trying different things, gaining education, gaining experience, getting a better return on my investment. If I can garden with the area I have, devoted to gardening and get a quarter of the harvest that I get, that wouldn't be as good. If I can get twice the harvest that I can get, normally get, that'd be better. So that's what I'm working towards, is just trying to become like a master of my domain. Be able to get the most out of it that I possibly can. And stuff like this is the return on that investment that I get. It's the tangible, tasteable, end result of my effort. And I love that, because even this, I can save the seeds from these and then do it again next year. And those plants will be specifically, begin to be bred more specifically designed to fit into this environment. That is awesome. I've said it before that when the world was perfect, it was a man and his wife in a garden with some animals. Behind me, you see an animal. That's a gar. A lot of people consider these to be trash fish. We definitely don't. Here's another one. Okay, I'm working on just some poor man's taxidermy, where when I take these guys and I cut them open, see, I cut them open to get the meat out. There's 2 big strips of meat, and there's a little section of the bones and like the innards. Well, if I remove all that, you pretty much got a hollow shell. And if I hang that up to dry and clear coat it a bit and stuff like that, I pretty much have some taxidermy. At this point, I can still tell that this is a fish, that this is not, there's a dead fish. But it looks cool hanging out here. Here's another one. Got a project of these I'm working on. But for me, you know, another way that I spend my time besides in the garden is fishing. The reason that I do that is food. It's amazing too because gar right now is my top food species for my family. We really enjoy eating gar. A lot of people consider them to be trash fish, but if you notice, they've got scales, they've got fins. This is something that our creator made for food for us. Also, this one happens to be sucker fish, not like the Plecostomus algae eater sucker. But now some of you guys may recognize this guy. I believe it's Plecostomus plecostomus, the common pet shop Plecostomus. They call them plecos or algae eaters, janitor fish, things like that. They're actually a type of sucker mouth catfish native to South America. And they've got this sucker mouth here. You may have seen that inside aquariums. But the suckers that are kind of more look like a carp. We can sucker and we can carp. I like to bow fish those. We have some wild times as a family out during the day or out at night during the spawn, just shooting tons of fish with bows and arrows, reeling them in, and then we wind up with an end result. These guys, not only do I have the memories, you know, in this little mounted fish that I made, but I also have full bellies. We also have this wonderful opportunity to have some great meals because of the time we spent fishing. We made hundreds of pint jars. Hundreds. This spring alone. And last year, at the beginning of last year, I didn't know you could do this. I tested it. I said, look, these big carp, top commercial fish around the world. There's something that people brought over here as a food source, yet people hate them and throw them on the bank, and they don't like them. Like, that kind of testifies to the ignorance of man. It's got big scales, big fins. We know that this is a food fish. Let's see what we can do with it. It had a bunch of little bones in it. Thought, well, that's not exactly the best. That's why people don't like them sometimes, all the bones in them. So I wonder what happens if we can them. Because I'll open a can of salmon, and I'll see bones in there. But I touch them and they crumble. So we pressure canned our first carp last year. We took a risk. And all of a sudden we realized we have a canned salmon or a canned tuna substitute that is so amazing, something I completely love. We all do. And I'll tell you what too, you can even take these big old Malabar spinach leaves, make some carp salad or sucker salad out of this, like a tuna salad, put that inside these, wrap it up. It is so good. We absolutely love it. And I'll tell you what, this was another risk we took. This is a plant we never grew before. I planted it once, I think 4 years ago. I haven't had to plant it since. I got a giant wall of it growing. But I took a risk, and part of kind of, you know, providing for the family, I was seeing what kind of return I could get on that investment. For us, it was huge. It was huge. I love it so much. I see sheep wandering by too. Animal husbandry. That's another hobby of ours. Hobby of mine as the provider. But reproducing animals, taking care of them, making sure they're not dying, keeping them healthy, that provides food for our family. Focusing a lot in this video on the physical, but that's also a something that people can relate to. You know, everybody tries to eat daily pretty much, if you think about it, multiple times a day. So if you have hobbies that pertain to that, whether it's raising animals, growing a garden, fishing, there's alternative fishing methods like bow fishing, spear fishing. Spearfished my first fish this year too. Looking forward to doing more of that soon. And then also hunting. You know, those are my main hobbies. On this property, I work to set up our family. I work to set up a garden. I work to take care of the animals. Those are generally my hobbies. But they all testify to who I am as the provider, the earthly provider for my family. Away from home, generally it's hunting or fishing. I mean, that's most of the reasons I leave. For hobbies, for something I'm going to do for fun, or just helping others. You know, that's the other reason. I've really been blessed by taking the time to learn these things. Even this year, this one, let me think. I caught this one with bugger the other day. We went kayak fishing. I'll put a video up here of Bugger and I kayak fishing, and we caught this fish. It was a great way to spend some wholesome time with my son in just creation in the natural environment that was created for us, not the one that we've made for ourselves in the concrete jungles. We brought home some food and we had a good time. And something like that, an experience like that, is how I like to spend my time. It's how I like to behave. So part of it just is, as the provider, I've learned to look outside the traditional box here in America. The traditional box is go leave your family for a job to get the money. I still do that. I'm not condemning anyone who does that, but what I'm saying is that the more things you can realize fit into being a provider for your family, the less you can reduce that particular aspect of your life. And I personally find it more fulfilling. I know there's some people who just love leaving their families to go hang out at the office, to go do whatever they do, that they don't have to deal with their wives or their husbands and their children for that time period. I get that. It's not me. I get that. Not condemning anyone who does those things, but what I'm saying is that part of what I realized, and I just realized this in the conversation because we were talking about, like, hey, who's your best friend? Me and my wife were talking back and forth, and then we're like, well, individually, we don't really specifically have friends we do stuff with. Now, there's one particular guy from one particular family who I hang out with probably more often than a lot of others, and I talk to him a lot more than others. I said he would probably be my best friend. Either that or my workmate. Just because my workmate, we live very similar lives. We have very similar goals, and I spend a lot of time with them. Even outside of work, we do things together. A lot of times it's him and some of his kids, me and some of my kids, or his whole family and my whole family. You know, but what I realize is that the vast majority of my time is spent with my family, and that then all of my hobbies that I was realizing generate things that fall into the category of me being the provider for my family. I have a friend from back in Wisconsin, and he was coming online at one point, and when he was just choosing a username to use, he chose the name provider. And I thought, wow, that is so wise. Like, that is so cool to see that. And it's cool too because the example you set then, like, people often talk between gardening, wild edibles, animal husbandry, fishing, hunting. They talk about how well we are setting our kids up for the future. And I also hang out with other people, and, you know, there's young men who I'm like, look, learn how to do this now. Because when you get a wife, when you get children, a skill like this, knowing A, that this is food, and B, how to get the food out of here, that is awesome. That'll take you far in life, farther than the supermarket, you know. It just will. So I love passing that knowledge on and helping other people to learn to provide for themselves and to provide for others. I love stuff like that. It's part of who we're supposed to be. Again, there's a spiritual aspect to it. There's a physical aspect to it. A lot of the physical, if people have food and clothing, shelter, that's about it. Life doesn't need to be much more complex than that. And that's one reason why the more time I can spend having hobbies that provide for my family in this way, I find that personally, the more I enjoy my existence, the better my relationship is with my children because of the way that we spend time together. I know there's a lot of people who during quarantine, during everything that's been going on, they spent a lot of time with their family that they weren't used to spending. Our life didn't change much at all, like at all. But that's because of some things we did ahead of time. I would hate to suddenly wind up with my family and just realize I hate these people, that I can't stand these people, that I need to get away from these people or it's going to be terrible. That's sad. That's the way a lot of people's, you know, life and relationships and things like that were. But again, master of, the environment. That's what I was going to say. I was trying to think of what my point was about that fishing trip. It was only a couple weeks ago that I ever caught my first gar on a fishing pole at the lake. I only caught my first gar anywhere on a fishing pole this year. I caught one jug fishing before, and I've bow fished a couple. But now I'm trying to learn how to catch them on a pole. I did great. I went out and caught like 5 in one day. I'll put a card up here. Caught the biggest one of my life, all on fishing poles. But that was like an hour and a half, 2 hours away. I live like 10 minutes from the lake, so I'm like, how do I master my domain here? The other day, Monster Truck and I went out, we caught 6 gar. Okay, last night I went out with Sweet Pepper. We caught 3 gar. Had more on. Didn't get them all in. They're a tough fish to hook. Look at that mouth. How do you get a hook in there? It's nothing but bone and teeth. But we can do it, and we have done it. So part of it is just learning those new skills. Realizing, oh, this is food. Here's how to catch them. Here's how I can succeed at that. Here's how I can become a master of my domain. Oh, look, the carp are spawning at the lake. Wait, somebody gave me a bow. Let's go figure out how to do this. Oh, all right, bow fishing's a lot of fun. Hey, look, we can shoot suckers too. They're spawning at night here in the creek. Let's go. Now we've got hundreds of jars of food. I love stuff like that. It's all part of mastering my domain. That Malabar spinach, it works well here. I haven't planted it in years. That's part of being a proper steward of my area. You guys don't all live where I do. But wherever you do, what can you hunt? What can you fish? Are there clean bodies of water where you can get decent fish? I don't know. Not everywhere even has places where, you know, you'd want to eat the fish out of. But look into fishing. It's a great way to get some good food for your family. What can you grow? Do you need to have some 5-gallon buckets on your balcony? Do you need to just wrap a little bit of fabric around them or something to make them look more presentable? Can you get some fancy pots, put a couple pepper plants out there, some tomatoes, maybe some cilantro, make your own salsa from home? I don't know. But figure it out. And then figure out the wise way to do that. When you grow a plant and you like a plant, how do you save the seeds from that? How do you take stewardship of that where you don't need to get them anymore? That's the stuff I love. Becoming a master of my domain as a provider, being able to not only raise my children in that way and pass on that education and information to them, but then to teach others too. I had some friends come out bow fishing for the first time this year because of what I learned. And they said, I want to do that. And I said, well, come, I'll teach you. Let's learn this. Let's do this. Let's master this. It's been good to see. It's amazing to see people just rejoice and be amazed at even stuff like this. Like I said, this is my favorite one right now. There's reasons for it. But plenty of people just hate this fish and would never want anything to do with it. That's their choice. I know better. I know better. So hopefully this inspires some of you guys just to think outside of the box. Figure out what you can do in your area. Figure out other things that fall into the category of provision. One thing, we provide clothing, right? Somehow we need to get clothing. Well, guess what? Some of my children and my wife, they know how to sew a bit and they're working on it more. So they can get some fabric or some old stuff that's fallen apart. They can repair it. They've provided, you know, clothing from rags, and some of it looks really good. They can take fabric and provide, you know, skirts or dresses for themselves. That's another way of providing. Think about it. Okay, that's a little bit outside of my box because I don't do that right now, but I was thinking outside of my box as I'm encouraging others to do. What else falls in the category of provision? You don't want to walk around naked. And if you do, you shouldn't. You shouldn't want that. So, how do you provide clothes? Is there a way you can take a greater stewardship of that yourself? It could be a fun hobby. It could be a rewarding hobby. If you get really good at it and produce extra, it could even, you know, offset some of your financial obligations. You could sell some of that stuff. However it could work out. I just wanted, in light of recently reflecting on kind of how a lot of my life just revolves around my true identity as the provider, the earthly provider for this family, I wanted to share that with you guys. It hit me when I realized it, and it wasn't a conscious effort. It wasn't something I was setting out to do. Okay, I'm only going to focus my time on things that make sense and get me a return on my investment. That wasn't the goal. But as I lived with wisdom and intention and then reflected, I said, hey, here's where I got. This makes sense. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Papa out.
Thank you, bye-bye.